Delhi High Court, which passed an order on Wednesday giving home buyers the option of going to the collector if the rate at which they buy or sell their property is lesser than the circle rate where their property is located. Magicbricks Now did report this yesterday, and today, to bring you more perspective on the order, we are being joined by two guests, Advocate Anirudh Wadhwa, who filed the PIL that spurred this judgment, and Amit Gupta, who is an advocate and an expert on real estate. Mr. Wadhwa, Mr. Gupta, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us here on the news on Magicbricks Now. I will come to you first, Mr. Wadhwa, by asking you to break down this order for us. What does this order mean for the home buyer or the seller?
Okay, Krishna, to give you a perspective, let us understand what the situation was prior to the order. Prior to this order, prior to the judgment, consumers did not have an option of getting their property papers registered if their transaction was below the circle rate. The order has held that this is not correct, and property owners now have the option of getting their papers registered even if the transaction is below the circle rate, and they can get their dispute as to the stamp duty referred to the collector.
All right, Mr. Wadhwa, I will toss it back to Amit. Then Amit, you tell us, what does this mean for every transaction that is lower than the circle rate? You have to queue up in front of the collector's office.
See, every transaction in this case need not necessarily be referred to the collector, for the reason this order particularly, this judgment particularly deals with the subject where properties which are priced below the circle rates of the market rates of properties which are below the circle rates. These particularly deal with the colonies like Maharani Bagh, New Friends Colony, Panchil Park also, and similarly placed colonies. In these colonies, a peculiar situation has arisen that the market rates are far below than the circle rates of the properties. So this judgment, what this judgment says is that you have an option to satisfy the registering authority at the first instance, and if registering authority is not satisfied with the valuation, then registering authority can refer that to the collector, which is clearly envisaged in section 47 of the Stamp Act.
All right, Mr. Gupta. Now, just want to ask you this to both of you gentlemen. So we'll go to Mr. Wadhwa first. Since it fosters, uncertainty, will this also open up ways for under-the-table dealings, Mr. Wadhwa?
No, I don't agree with that, Krishna. What it would do is it would give genuine property buyers and genuine property sellers the option of getting their documents registered by going to the registering officer and satisfying him that this is the true price of the transaction. What was impossible earlier has been made possible by the Delhi government, and as long as buyers and sellers are genuinely representing the true value of their transaction in the papers, they should be able to satisfy the registrar. Ultimately, the court has held that there is a judicial supervision over registration of documents, and that would ensure that there would be no underhand dealings.
All right, Mr. Gupta, I want to come to you on the same. What about this particular move, aiding red tape, aiding underhand dealings?
No, I particularly don't believe this, because this is a judicial overview, and in any case the procedure of law has to be followed. And I personally believe that, see, this is within the public domain. Every instrument which is going to be registered is well within the public domain, and let us suppose a document is registered at a lower value, then that can act as a precedent for all the subsequent transactions. So I personally don't believe this.
Believe in that. Mr. Wadhwa, I'm going to come to you on this. What should anybody transacting in property do, after this particular order?
So after this particular order, people should evaluate their transaction. Earlier, people who were unable to get their property registered if the transaction was below the circle rate can now do so at the rate that they feel is fair for that property, as long as they have enough evidence to satisfy the judicial authorities, the sub-registrar, the collector, ultimately the district court, that this is the true price of the transaction. So as long as people really are following the true spirit and letter of the law, there should be no problem and they should go ahead and buy and sell properties.
Anirudh Wadhwa, Amit Gupta, both of you, thank you so much for taking time out to be with us here on the news to understand this Delhi High Court order on Magicbricks Now.